Chapter 4. Judith was late, again. While they waited, Ray did her best to block out the incessant buzzing of office gossip. This cluster worked for a market research company specialising in public opinion polls. An attractive line manager had just started in their department, and various views on whether he had a girlfriend were being bandied about. Some said he had a passing resemblance to an actor playing a troubled police officer in a popular TV drama. Except their new manager had bigger ears, and sometimes he seemed a bit tired. Ray clenched her teeth and hoped Judith would show up soon. As a distraction, she reminded herself of what she was dealing with here. She tapped a few commands into her eyeline and projected a summary of the client's cases into her palm. To her left sat Maria, the line manager whose eyes bulged like a sleepy-looking toad. The main issue here was Maria's dependence on the office for her social life. The grey-green-lipped Latina thought of herself as a kind of social hub for the company, wheeling from team to team, muttering the occasional directive for which she'd rather not have the responsibility, then dismissing them with a swish of her hand. Management had given up on advancing her career and simply wanted Ray to instill the necessary determination for Maria to manage her post. A typical briefing. Next to her sat Russell, faded blue eyes and a prim side parting, undernourished and over-tanned. He'd got the job as a market researcher because he was chatty, and they'd assumed the public would warm to him. However, the role also required a degree of listening, which was virtually impossible for Russell because he never stopped jabbering on, skipping mindlessly from one incongruous topic to another. More often than not, people hung up on him, puzzled by a call from some guy with verbal diarrhea. This round of metastasis was Russell's last chance. After these adjustments, if he didn't knuckle down and get on with the job, they'd terminate his contract. The only reason they hadn't fired him already was that Maria had backed him up on several crucial occasions. After all, what were friends for? Maria just couldn't have too many buddies, and Russell was he was so full of life and verve and pizzazz and fun. Ray dragged her withering gaze from the pair. She knew she was getting bitter. Her training was supposed to have prepared her in non-judgmental methods of acceptance. She was meant to acknowledge their idiosyncrasies with patience and professionalism. She guessed there'd been a time she'd received her clusters with such admirable open-mindedness, but that acceptance had soured, mulching and decomposing into the meagre tolerance fermenting within her today. Skipping through her notes for the cluster, Ray's attention was drawn to a small dot blinking on her projection. She pressed the alarm, and her eyeline brought up a reminder for an event she'd been invited to. Her old friends from the academy were holding a reunion in a couple of days, and she hadn't responded yet. She ought to go. It would be good for her. So why did the idea make her guts churn? In a flutter of handbags, coats, and umbrellas, Judith apologised her way into the room. Ray closed her projection and hurried the group along, keen to get them into metastasis. "Right," she said. "Now everybody's here. We can pick up the threads from the last session. We're running behind, so let's go in as soon as possible. Okay with everyone?" The cluster exchanged a few glances and murmured their assent. Ray thought she detected a tremor of disapproval There'd probably been some discussion of her outside the sessions, and she guessed the consensus wasn't favourable. But as long as nobody filed a complaint, she really didn't give a shit. Right, you know the drill. Let's do the lipids first. The 6 members of her cluster each found their Naris inducer, inserted the 2 tubes into their noses, and drew in a strong breath. The fast-acting solution shot to the top of their nostrils to be absorbed by the olfactory bulb. From here, the compound of cell-derived nanovesicles rushed on into the limbic system of their brains. The first stages of neuromanipulation had begun. There followed some coughs and splutters as people settled down, and Judith dabbed her creased face with a tissue. "Well, I'm not sure about anybody else," said Russell, grinning like a shot fox, "but that stuff gets right up my nose." Ray winced. He made the same fucking joke every fucking week. "Very good," she said, grinding her teeth. "Shall we?" She tapped a few commands on her touchpad, and their recliners tilted back. Maria started fiddling with her inducer. "Don't remove the tubes," Ray sighed. "Just leave them where they are." "But it's itchy. I don't give a... Just leave it, please." Once they were more or less horizontal, Ray keyed in the final commands and felt the slight tap of the inducer pricking the inside of her nostril. The DNA hormone solution began transferring, and the rig established its link to the cluster's nervous system. There was a beep as it released the sedative, and she silently counted down. 5, 4, 3,